What if I told you some NFL teams didn't want to draft a player because he was too big? Well, coming out of college, scouts thought Derrick Henry's biggest strength, his size, was actually his biggest weakness. To figure out how he proved every doubter wrong and became one of the best running backs in the league, we have to go back to 2005, when Derrick Henry was a 6'2", nearly 200-pound middle schooler. On the football field, Henry was so dominant that his team had to create something called the Derrick Henry rule. Basically, they would take Derrick out of the game once they were up 21 points to level the playing field. Like, just imagine being in middle school, finishing your pre-algebra class for the day, and then having to go play football against someone that's larger than your dad. However, by the time Henry reached high school, there was a problem. He was enrolled at Yulee High School, a school that opened in 2006, with a relatively small student body and a 4A classification, meaning it wasn't a big-time football school that college scouts traveled to. So Henry would have to be incredible if he wanted to get on the radar of college programs. But incredible would be an understatement when describing just how good high school Derrick Henry was. As a freshman, Derrick quickly won the starting job and put up video game numbers: 2,465 rushing yards and 26 touchdowns on just 313 carries, which averages out to about 7.9 yards per carry. And keep in mind, this is high school, so the team only played around 10 to 11 games a year, meaning he averaged 224 rushing yards a game. By his senior year, Henry wasn't just a local sensation. He was a national phenom. He was able to bench press 365 pounds, squat 500, deadlift 550, and run a 4.5 40-yard dash. That year, he shattered the single-season rushing record with 4,261 yards and 55 touchdowns, while averaging nearly 10 yards per carry. He also had a record-breaking 502-yard rushing game. By the time he graduated, he held the national career rushing record with an incredible 12,124 yards. It's a record that may never be broken. Coming out of high school, Henry was ranked as a 5-star recruit and the best running back in the nation, but there were doubts surrounding him. While his stats were absolutely insane, playing for a school like Yulee High School meant his competitors were rarely Division I prospects. They were everyday kids, wholly unprepared for the freight train that was Derrick Henry rushing towards them. But still, every top college in the nation was willing to bet on him. Henry initially committed to Georgia before flipping his commitment to Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Even as a freshman, Derrick's potential was impossible to ignore. Despite sharing a backfield with future NFL talents Alvin Kamara, Kenyon Drake, and TJ Yeldon, Henry still found ways to flash the raw power, speed, and determination that would soon make him a household name. By his junior year, the spotlight was all his, and he didn't just meet expectations. He obliterated them. Henry rushed for 2,219 yards, shattering Herschel Walker's long-standing SEC record. But Derrick didn't just carry the ball. He carried Alabama all the way to a national championship, barreling into the end zone 28 times throughout the season, a number that still sits atop the SEC record books. But it wasn't just the stats that made Derrick Henry unforgettable. It was how he did it. At 6'3", 240 pounds, with a deceptive 4.5 speed, Henry turned defenders into mere speed bumps. Single tacklers didn't stand a chance. Gang tackles? Good luck. His runs often looked like something out of a Madden game as he dragged entire defenses downfield. And the accolades poured in. Henry became the first running back in a decade to win the Heisman Trophy, solidifying himself as the best player in college football. By the time he declared for the NFL draft, Henry had cemented his place as one of college football's greatest running backs. But just like when he was coming out of high school, people still doubted him. During the pre-draft process, Henry was projected as a late first, early second round pick. Some scouts worried he was too big. They thought he wouldn't be able to get around defenders and that his upright running style might limit his effectiveness at the pro level. Others questioned his versatility. Could he catch passes out of the backfield? Could he be more than just a battering ram? But the Tennessee Titans knew he was special, so with the 45th overall pick in the second round, they selected Derrick Henry, pairing him with veteran running back DeMarco Murray. During Henry's rookie year, the Titans leaned heavily on Murray as their workhorse back. but Derrick provided a glimpse of the future. At 6'3", 247, he looked like a linebacker playing running back. And when he got the ball, defenders felt every ounce of his power. Henry finished his rookie campaign with 490 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. But his contributions went beyond the stat sheet. The Titans began using Henry in critical short yardage situations, and he would almost always deliver. Tennessee finished that season with a 9-7 record and narrowly missed the playoffs. But it was clear that their future was bright, and Derrick Henry was a big reason why. In his second season, Henry began to take on a larger role in the Titans' offense. Sharing snaps with DeMarco Murray, Derrick rushed for 744 yards and 5 touchdowns, while averaging 4.2 yards per carry. But in the playoffs, the running back showed us exactly who he was. Also guys, I gotta show you what's on my feet. My socks from Bombas, the sponsor of today's video. Bombas are legit the most comfortable socks I've ever worn. True story, I wore these. They're chunky rag calf socks on Thanksgiving Day. And everyone was like, whoa, those socks are really nice. And truth be told, no one has ever complimented my socks before I started wearing Bombas. After my mom saw them, she actually went and bought a handful of pairs for my sister for Christmas. Bombas also does something I love. For every pair bought, they donate a pair to people experiencing homelessness. To this day, over 150 million essential clothing items have been donated. So if you want to be like my mom and hook someone up with a few pair of Bombas this holiday season, I got you. New customers get 20% off their first purchase. Just go to bombas.com/SheGotSports and use code SheGotSports at checkout. Coming into the wildcard game against the Chiefs, DeMarco Murray was injured, meaning that the backfield was all Henry's. He went on to rush for 156 yards and a touchdown as the Titans came back to win 23-22. Unfortunately, Tennessee would lose their next game versus New England. But everything was about to change for Henry. Prior to the 2018 season, the Titans decided to release DeMarco Murray and go all in on Derrick Henry. But once the season began, it was looking like the team made the wrong decision. Throughout the first 13 games, Henry hadn't had a game with over 60 rushing yards. But then came week 14 against the Jags, where Henry put on a masterclass. He rushed for 238 yards and 4 touchdowns, including this 99-yard touchdown where he stiff-armed half the Jaguars defense into oblivion as he became only the second running back in NFL history with a 99-yard rush. The following week, his rampage continued, rushing for 170 yards and 2 scores against the Giants. Coming out of college, some scouts felt Derrick Henry had no acceleration at all. But in the NFL, for as large as he is, his acceleration is off the charts. He was nearly impossible to catch, but if you did, bringing him down wasn't going to be easy. Henry finished that 2018 season with 1,059 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns. It was clear that the Titans no longer needed a committee approach. Derrick Henry was their guy. By 2019, Henry had fully embraced the role as the Titans' workhorse, and the results were historic. He led the league in rushing yards with 1,540 and 16 touchdowns, bullying defenses week after week. When the playoffs rolled around, Henry took his game to another level. Against the Patriots, Henry dominated with 182 rushing yards, which eliminated Tom Brady and company. Just a week later, he had a 195-yard performance against the Baltimore Ravens, stunning the top-seeded team in the AFC before ultimately falling short to the Chiefs in the championship game. But if 2019 was special, 2020 was historic. That year, Derrick Henry became just the 8th player in NFL history to rush for over 2,000 yards in a single season, finishing with a jaw-dropping 2,027 yards and 17 touchdowns. His performance not only earned him a second straight rushing title, but also the NFL Offensive Player of the Year award. Week after week, he left defenders in the dust and carried his team to victory. At 6'3" and nearly 250 pounds, Henry defied expectations, proving that a big back could dominate in a league that increasingly favored speed and agility. Heading into the 2021 season, Henry was ranked 4th by his peers on the NFL Top 100 Players list, and for good reason. Teams just had no answer for him. Henry started the 2021 season on fire, rushing for 937 yards and 10 touchdowns in just 8 games. He was on pace for another historic year, but then disaster struck. In a Week 8 matchup with the Colts, Henry broke his foot, and had to undergo season-ending surgery. Before the following season, Derrick turned 28, so some thought we were going to see a decline in production from him, because 28 is when running backs seem to just fall off. And to make matters even worse, Henry was returning to the field with a plate and screws in his foot. In week 4 of the 2022 season, Henry put up a 114-yard, 1-touchdown performance. Just a week later, he had 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. The next week, he had 129 rushing yards. Then he had a monster 219-yard, 2-touchdown performance against the Texans before having his 5th straight game with over 100 rushing yards, while rushing for 115 and 2 touchdowns against the Chiefs. One thing was clear, Derrick Henry was back and better than ever. A fall-off was most certainly not happening. The man was a monster. He finished the season with 1,538 yards and 13 touchdowns, finishing second in the league in rushing yards. He continued to dominate in 2023, putting up yet another 1,000-yard season. But then, there was a problem. Derrick's contract was expiring at the end of 2023, and the Titans, who were about to enter a rebuild, weren't interested in paying Henry, who was on the wrong side of 30. But this wasn't just happening to Derrick. Running backs around the league weren't getting paid. The position just wasn't viewed as very important to many front offices. The Giants didn't re-sign Saquon Barkley, the Raiders didn't re-sign Josh Jacobs, and lots more. However, free agency might have been the best thing to ever happen to Derrick. Henry had to carry the Titans on his back for years, but never had a great O-line and never had an elite quarterback. However, everything was about to change. Henry signed a 2-year, $16 million contract with the Baltimore Ravens, a team that had just went to the AFC Championship game and had an incredible quarterback in Lamar Jackson. There was one main reason the running back signed with the Ravens, and that was to win a Super Bowl. He felt he had the best chance to win his first ring with Baltimore. But the season didn't start the way the Ravens planned. In week 1, they lost to the Chiefs by just a few inches. Then in week 2, they were beat by the Raiders, one of the worst teams in the league. However, after that loss, the team started to find their groove and win games. Their rushing attack with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry has been nearly unstoppable. The Ravens are currently ranked 2nd in rushing yards behind just Saquon Barkley and the Eagles. And you know those 3 free agent running backs I mentioned earlier? Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Josh Jacobs? Yeah, those guys are the top 3 leading rushers in the league right now. And all their teams are having great seasons. People thought the running back position was going to become irrelevant, but these guys have proved that's not going to happen anytime soon. Derrick Henry has been a beast this year. Just 14 weeks into the season, he already has 1,407 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns. Also, he's averaging nearly 6 yards per carry, which is unreal. Henry, now 30, is obviously well aware that many running backs, if not all, lose a step once they hit his age. To try and prevent this from happening, Derrick spends over $240,000 a year to take care of his body. In season, the running back doesn't eat his first meal till 4 p.m. It's a massive one though. Usually at least 3 chicken breasts are on his plate. He also follows a strict diet. No fried foods, no dairy, no gluten, and no artificial sugars. To keep his body fresh, he uses a hyperbaric chamber, infrared saunas, and gets an IV multiple times a week with the vitamins and nutrients. His teammates say he's obsessive, and that's why he's able to follow this strict regimen and thrive. Even though the Ravens are currently 9-5, they are still viewed as one of the best teams in the NFL, and there's still a real possibility Henry will get his wish and hoist a Lombardi trophy at the end of the season. As I mentioned earlier, teams aren't really valuing running backs anymore or giving them big contracts. If you want to learn about the running back that kind of sparked this shift, check out this video here on Todd Gurley. He was the best running back in the league, but then fell off fast and hard.